As we begin our studies into the Romantic era, we're going to kick it off by looking at William Wordsworth. Specifically, later in the week, we will be reading Lucy Gray, a poem. However, I'd like you to get familiar with William Wordsworth as well as the Romantic era so that we can better understand his work and the time that it came from. To start, William Wordsworth lived from 1770 to 1850. He was born in England. His mother died when he was 8, and his father later died while in school. It's said that this experience shapes much of his later work. Wordsworth studied at the St. John's College in Cambridge, and before his final semester, he took a walking tour of Europe. This led to his interest in and sympathies for the troubles and speech of the common man. It was with Samuel Taylor Coleridge, another poet of the time, that Wordsworth published the famous Lyrical Ballads in 1798. While the poems themselves are some of the most influential in Western literature, it is the preface that Wordsworth wrote in the second edition that remains one of the most important testaments to a poet's views on both his craft and his place in the world. In the preface, Wordsworth writes of the need for common speech within poems and argues against the hierarchy of the period which valued epic poetry above the lyric. The Romantic era is from 1800 to 1850. It was influenced by the French Revolution, which came about due to the radical social and political upheaval of France during that time. Their economy was very bad, and the hierarchy between the higher and lower classes was very wide, causing tension. The concept of the sublime was introduced. Sublime meaning of higher spiritual, moral, or intellectual worth. This time period was rich in literary criticism, as well as non-fiction prose being published. Books on literary theories, such as the Biographica Literaria by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, books on human and women's rights by William Godwin and Mary Wollstonecraft, politically charged criticisms like Will Hazlitt, as well as personal essay and confession writing, periodicals also, such as the Edinburgh Review and the Blackwoods Magazine. Romanticism saw a shift from faith in reason to faith in the senses, feelings, and imagination. A shift from interest in urban society to an interest in the rural and natural. A shift from public, impersonal poetry to subjective poetry, and from concern with the scientific and mundane to interest in the mysterious and the infinite. Mainly, poets began to care about the individual, the intuition, and the imagination. Some basic characteristics of Romantic literature are that imagination and emotion above reason and formal rules took place, that imagination was a gateway to a transcendent experience, also known as the sublime. There was an emphasis on loving nature and valuing the common, natural man. There was a belief that the ills of society were a result of industrialization. Rebellion and revolution against that industrialization was glorified, and there was an emphasis on introspection, often melancholy, as the poet usually searched his soul. Some examples of Romantic artwork during this era: The wanderer above the fog. The Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog by Caspar David Friedrich. The Salisbury Cathedral from the Meadow by John Constable. The Slave Ship by J.M.W. Turner. Now that we've finished this brief introduction into William Wordsworth and the Romantic era, take a moment to listen to this song. As you listen, answer the following question and be ready to present it in class. Based on what you now know, what political, social, or global changes do you think have an effect on literature in today's world? If you were a writer, would you try to be a revolutionary like Wordsworth?